It is my absolute delight to introduce to you His Excellency Danny Faure, President of the Seychelles. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about, Danny, may I call you Danny?
Danny.
What's happened in the Seychelles and where you're coming to now in terms of industrialization, in terms of opportunities for business, and of course, Sub-Saharan Africa, where it goes next and the role you're playing in the development of that. With all due respect, I am very familiar with small islands. My father is from Mauritius, and I've been very lucky enough to be there. But I wouldn't call it a powerhouse by any means. Yet you've made sure that the Seychelles has certainly made its mark in certain industries. Tell me about it.
Yes, Naga. 15 years ago, the Seychelles government took a decision for us to construct our own oil tankers. And one of its journeys, we entered into the territorial waters of United States of America. And the Coast Guard boarded one of the tankers, spoke to the captain, requested the captain that he seize the papers, and said, this tanker, who are the owners? The captain said, it's the Seychelles government. He said, Seychelles government, this tiny islands in the Indian Ocean, now you have tankers. So this is the story of big ideas.
Thinking big.
Thinking big.
And when it comes to economic policy, in your time in government, you've obviously been in the finance ministry, 2010 to 16, vice president, now president. The economy cannot be something you ignore, but as we've heard today, stability and projecting an image of stability among any of the 54 countries is important. How have you, or what are you doing to get that image across?
I think it's important for all governments. The economy of any country is central. And the leadership that we need to provide to our respective governments and economies is that we need to present what is called very strong macroeconomic framework. We have to behave where the fiscal policy is concerned and ensure that year on a year you generate primary surplus. And there is very strong social protection for the population. But where business is concerned, we need to respect that the engine of economic growth lies with the private sector.
Now, all of this sounds great. What have you actually done in practical terms to prove that what you're saying is happening?
Now, what we did in 2008, we said to ourselves, what is the role? We need to define the role of the state. Government is there to facilitate. Government is not there to run businesses. That is not our job. That's not our work. The best people to set the business, to run the business, are the business people. So we brought in, we removed ourselves from a series of business entities that we were operating and opened the market and immediately set what is called a proper regulatory framework to encourage foreign business investors to come into the Seychelles. We revamped the taxation policy. We brought in a new tax policy, which, by the way, there's an ongoing reform right now taking place in our country to bring down the rate of our tax, ensure that the tax is broadened and the tax also is fair. So these are the things that we have taken bold decisions to ensure that the business sector thrives. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Well, when you think of the story of the Seychelles and the economy, debt played a big part, corruption, also another buzzword we've heard here, infrastructure, lack of thereof, how that can be improved. It's a reflection, isn't it, of many of the problems among 54 countries in the continent. What are you observing in terms of what you've managed to do on a small collection of islands compared to what bigger countries are having to do and the challenges they're facing?
I think number one is for us to get into power, and once there's a big difference. You want to get into power, and when you have the power, what you do. I think most of the time the mistake that we do, we have been doing in the continent, is we get into power. And then we forget why are we there and who brought us to power. As a new president, I stand on certain very strong values. I stand for transparency, accountability, and good governance. So these are the three, it's a triangle, that will accompany me in this mandate that I have. And we are there to serve the people. And the people, through the media, through institutions, they need to hold their governments accountable for every cent, for every project. It is their concern. It is our concern for us to govern, to have the right direction, and get rid of all corruption. You know, corruption has hurt Africa. There has been a major study done by the African Union, and across Africa, people know, but I think the time has come for us to take decisive actions on that. Clean it, get out. We have, in my country, established a new commission on anti-corruption. So basically, we've created institutions. And there is the time whereby we are talking about having strong leaders. This is many years ago. You know, these are new times, Naga. Here we're talking about leaders, but we need to have strong institutions. Leaders come and go. I am here, I will go, but we leave behind strong institutions to take care of the wealth of the people, the prosperity of the people, and ensure that governments have the right policies to implement in their benefit and for them.
Which countries, or can you give me some examples of that you think are inspiring or that are helping lead the way and change the perception of Africa in terms of corruption or poor infrastructure, poor governance?
I can talk about my own country. I can talk about what I am doing as Seychelles and the president of the Seychelles. I want my country to be a leader in the domain of transparency, of good governance and accountability.
How much influence can you have on other countries?
It's a small country, but we walk the talk. So I have been walking the talk in the SADC region. I will continue to walk the talk in the African Union. And people will garner the support of what we're doing, but we just need to walk the talk.
How do you, and I will push you on this, how
Great.
do you get that message? How do you push that message as a small country among the bigger players? Who's listening to you?
They listen when I talk.
Well, everyone likes to think that people listen when they talk, but prove to me that they're listening. Prove to me that you are making it, you are influencing.
I can tell you I've been my country's vice president since 2010, and I've walked the corridors of the African Union, and I know each one of them. And when I became president, and I've been talking the same way that I used to speak when I was a finance minister on key development agenda of my country, and they listen to me. They listen to me, and they know that what I'm telling them is the truth.
So tell me then, I asked this question to the Vice President of Ghana earlier, just a few minutes ago, that 10 years ago we were talking about industrialization in Africa, and we were saying we should be here at a certain point. Well, 10 years on, we're not there. And there is optimism that in 10 years' time that will change. Why do you think we're not there yet? And what do you think has changed to mean that in 10 years the ambition will be met?
First of all, we need to have the right people at the level of leadership.
And are they there?
For example, in Ghana, we have the vice president who comes from the central bank. He knows what macroeconomics is all about. He knows about it. And I think that his president is fortunate to have him there. We need to have more people like him. So we need to have the right leaders across sectors. Sometimes we have problems in changing, but I think if we make the necessary change and get the right people across sectors, we have a devolution whereby ministers are there to take care of the portfolios, and we create strong institutions, the agency, the regulatory bodies, We ensure that the CEOs that we appoint are accountable to the boards and are not accountable to ministers. Get them accountable to the boards. And whenever the agencies are not working, the board is responsible to fire the CEO. But if the board does not do that, then it is the prerogative of the president to fire the board and get things moving.
What do you say to entrepreneurs? A gentleman asked a question earlier. What measures do I need to take as a business to ensure success in your country? What is your message to business? Because business can't control government. Business has its own problems to deal with. What can it use in itself, its own tools, to be a success?
Yeah, I'll answer this question on another different way. We need to believe in the next generation of African businessmen. We need to have a belief in the youths of our own country. So we as governments and leaders, we need to ensure that we have the right policies in place to make lives of the businesses, of the entrepreneurs, wonderful, so that they can enjoy, they can do their work. But most of the time we have the policies and then we fight the banks. Because the banks, they are so used in collecting funds, making money, and not even allowing for them to have a portfolio where SMEs are concerned to help the new businesses. They spend a lot of time after the big businesses. But I think the future now lies in the hands of the small entrepreneurs. And I think we need to give them hope. So in my country, my own country, Seychelles, we've been looking at the SMEs. We've been working with the banks. So we guarantee the small businesses. We also have a system where we have seed capital for businesses to come in, to start up businesses.
And this was something that was brought up by Mohamed Tuji, who I also spoke to from Tanzania, who said it's at getting access to banks that have enough capital
Exactly.
to promise expansion and growth.
Exactly.
Do you have that?
Yes. But I think it's not to the necessary scale and level that I would want. I think in my own country, our banks, they need to do more to help our young entrepreneurs. We start giving them, but the moment they start growing and they want to expand, it needs to be easier for the bank to have trust in them, and this is the problem.
And what about someone like Bob Diamond, who set up Atlas Group, a banking system across 7 countries, 9 banks across 7 countries? How easy is it, as an African country, to coordinate with your neighbours, to coordinate a banking system, a funding system, a policy of attracting entrepreneurship and growth of business?
I think the work that he's been doing is fantastic. We need to thank him. We need more people like him. I think the next step is to enter the central banks of our own countries. Most of the time when we look at fiscal policy and monetary policies amongst heads of states and ministers, the central banks are not there. So it's important that we bring the central bank on board, because through the central bank we'll be able, in a better position, to address the problems that we are now facing.
How quickly can that be done?
The sooner that we can get them on board. We have taken the right decision recently at the SADC meeting. When I attended the SADC meeting, we discovered that it was the first time that governors of the central bank were invited. And we said, no, we should not only invite them, make it irregular annual meetings for them to come.
And make them accountable.
And be accountable.
We started off by talking about how the Seychelles thinks big with the oil tankers. 15 years ago, they've been paid off. The loans have been paid off.
We've cleared all the loans.
Cleared the loans. What's the next big thing for the Seychelles, as a final thought?
The big thing about Seychelles is, the oceans. We all need the oceans, but we need a healthy ocean. So in my country now, we're talking about the blue economy as the next frontier. How do we tap into the resources of the blue economy?
If we talk again, we're lucky enough to talk again in 10 years, I'd be interested to hear what you're doing. But for the moment, His Excellency Danny Faure,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.